Hello, space travelers. Welcome to the channel where people create stories about the universe. Get ready for a new adventure.
The planet Illyria 9 looked almost like Earth. Almost. And that word troubled everyone who had ever set foot on its surface. From orbit, it was beautiful. Blue oceans, lush green continents, clouds slowly swirling in spirals. But the sensors of the Intergalactic Academy detected strange fluctuations in the biosphere. The ecosystem here wasn't just alive, it was reacting, as if it were watching. The landing shuttle sliced through the atmosphere with a muffled roar. Its hull glowed white-hot, while inside, 3 cadets sat motionless, strapped into their seats. The only person among them was looking out the narrow porthole. Cadet Alisa Moren had just graduated from the Intergalactic Academy. Her uniform still looked too new, without scratches or traces of real missions. On her shoulder, a single silver graduate's insignia. First landing, first mission, and, as she suspected, the first test of survival. "The atmosphere is stable," the onboard AI announced in a mechanical voice. But biological activity exceeds the norm by 312%. Across from her sat Cadet Saltaire, a tall, slender member of the Valorian race. His skin shifted color depending on his emotions, and now it was a dull purple, a sign of nervous tension. Next to him sat the massive Grain, a member of the stone-skinned Draconians. He looked calm, but his tail was slowly tapping the shuttle's floor. "Human," he rumbled without looking at Alice. "Did you really volunteer for a field mission?" "Didn't I?" she replied calmly. The Valorian clicked his jaws softly. "According to statistics, new cadets of your species have the lowest survival rate on Class 4 bioplanets." Alice just shrugged. She had already gotten used to this at the Academy. Humans were considered fragile. The shuttle jolted sharply. Outside the window, the green sea of the forest was approaching far too quickly. The trees were enormous. Their canopies formed a solid sphere like the surface of an ocean. Shadows of creatures flashed between them, too fast for the sensors to classify. 5 seconds to landing," the AI announced. And then all 3 of them heard it. A low, drawn-out roar. It didn't come from outside. It seemed to pass through the ground, through the shuttle's hull, through the bones. Grain tensed instantly. "A large predator," he said. "Very large." The shuttle crashed into a clearing between the trees, raising a storm of leaves and black dust. The engines fell silent. The silence of the jungle descended suddenly, unnatural, as if the entire forest had held its breath. The ramp slowly lowered. The damp air rushed in immediately, warm, heavy with the scent of plants and something metallic, almost blood-like. Alice stepped out first. The ground beneath her feet was soft, covered in a thick layer of moss. Branches crackled somewhere in the distance. Creatures with translucent wings flitted overhead. Her heart was beating faster, but not out of fear. It felt familiar. Wild, alive. The shuttle's holographic projector activated, and the face of the mission commander appeared before them. "Cadets," he said coldly, "your task is simple in form but complex in execution." A 3-dimensional model of a creature appeared behind him. It resembled a dinosaur, a massive body, a long neck, powerful hind legs, and ridges along its back that glowed with a faint bioluminescent light. Species, Therex apex, the planet's dominant predator. Intelligence, above average. Aggressiveness, critical. Pause. Your task, find, tame, and ride the creature. Zaltair let out a short, nervous sound. That's impossible. The commander didn't even blink. The Academy thinks otherwise. His gaze lingered on Alice a little longer than on the others. It will be particularly interesting to observe the human approach to the task. The connection was cut off. The same roar echoed through the jungle again, this time closer. Green slowly turned his head into the darkness between the trees. It knows we're here? Alice took a deep breath. The scent of damp earth, the forest, the sound of life all around, and suddenly an almost forgotten sensation from childhood. Morning at the ranch, a horse's breath nearby. The moment before the animal decides to trust or to flee. She smiled. Then, she said quietly, we'd better get to know each other first. Somewhere in the thicket, something large stirred, and the forest began to wake up. The forest of Elira 9 changed as the sun set. This became clear even before the light faded completely. First, the bird-like creatures high in the treetops fell silent. Then the chirping of insects ceased. Even the wind, which had been slowly rustling the leaves, seemed to retreat cautiously. Silence remained, not peaceful, expectant. The three cadets moved several 100 meters away from the shuttle. According to protocol, staying near the landing site was dangerous. The heat from the engines attracted local predators. Green carried a portable shield generator, heavy even by his race's standards. Zaltair scanned the terrain. His multi-layered pupils shifted rapidly, analyzing the light spectra. Alice walked last, watching her step carefully. The ground here was strange, too soft. In places it seemed to breathe, rising and falling almost imperceptibly. Biological substrate, the Valorian said quietly, part of the planet's plant network. You mean we're walking on something alive? She asked. Technically, yes. Alice decided not to think about it for too long. They found natural cover, the roots of a giant tree that formed a semicircular hollow. The perfect spot, a single narrow entrance, good visibility, and solid ground. Grain activated the shield. The air barely rippled, creating a transparent sphere several meters in radius. Temporarily safe, he rumbled. Darkness fell abruptly, no twilight, as if someone had turned off the world's lights. And then the jungle came alive. A click echoed from afar, then a hiss. To the left, a dull thud, as if something massive had fallen to the ground. Plants above them began to glow, with a cold blue light that made the shadows even deeper. Alice sat by the entrance, clutching her field knife. The Academy had taught her to use plasma weapons, but right now she trusted simple things more. The smells grew stronger, moisture, plant sap, and something predatory and sweet. Night hunters, whispered Zaltair, looking at the scanner. There are dozens, no, hundreds of them. Something slid across the shield. The transparent surface flashed blue. Alice looked up. A creature the size of a large dog was slowly crawling across the barrier, long, segmented, with dozens of thin legs. Its eyes glowed green, and its jaws opened silently. Another appeared nearby, then another. Within a minute, the entire shield was covered with moving shadows. Grain tensed. If the generator falls, it won't fall, Alice said. She was surprised by the calmness in her own voice. Instead, she listened, not to the creatures, to the forest, the rhythm of the sounds, the pause between movements, just like in childhood, when you had to figure out if the horse was nervous or just listening to the night. Suddenly, Everything around them froze. The creatures on the shield stopped moving all at once. Slowly, one by one, they began to retreat into the darkness. Zaltair blinked. What? Silence returned, and then a footstep sounded, heavy, deep. The ground beneath them barely trembled. Another and another. Something enormous was moving nearby. It wasn't hiding. It wasn't hurrying. A predator that knows it has nothing to fear. The bioluminescent glow of the plant momentarily illuminated a silhouette among the trees. A long neck, spines along its back, eyes high above the ground. Therex. It wasn't approaching. It just stood there and stared straight at their camp. Alice slowly stood up, not looking away. Her heart was pounding, but the fear felt strangely familiar, like standing before a young stallion deciding whether to let a person approach. "Don't move," whispered Grain. But she had already taken a step forward, right to the edge of the shield. The creature tilted its head. No roar, no aggression, just observation. Several long seconds passed. Then the giant turned and vanished into the darkness as quietly as if it had never been there. Zaltair's scanner beeped. "Impossible," he whispered. "A dominant predator just retreated." Alice slowly sat back down. She looked out into the night forest and said quietly, "No." Pause. "It just came to see who we are." A new roar echoed from far away, no longer threatening, more like a warning. The night was just beginning. Morning on Illyria 9 brought no relief. It only revealed the problems the night had hidden. Light filtered through the giant canopies, but the air remained heavy and sticky. Everything around them was damp. The leaves, the ground, even the cadets' armor was covered in a thin film of condensation. And yet, they were parched. "A paradox," Zaltair said quietly, looking at the scanner readings. "There's more water around here than in a standard ocean sector, and none of it is fit for consumption." He showed the analysis. Microscopic organisms moved within a drop of water like a pack of predators. One sip without purification, and our bodies will start to break down from the inside. Grain snorted. The Academy knew this. "The Academy knew a lot of things," the Valorian replied dryly. Alice silently surveyed the area. On Earth, she had learned a simple rule. If animals survive, there must be a way. "We're looking for movement," she said. "Not water. Those who drink it." Both aliens looked at her with equal skepticism, but they followed. An hour later, the heat became unbearable. Their filters were working at their limit, and their energy reserves were depleting faster than the Academy had calculated. The plants sometimes moved on their own, pushing the leaves aside as if unwilling to let them pass. And then Zaltair stopped abruptly. "Food resources," he said. Fruits hung from the branches, dark red, translucent, pulsing with a faint light. Grain immediately reached for one. "Wait," said Alice. "We're wasting energy, human," he barked. "My metabolism needs food." "And you want to eat the first thing that glows in a strange forest?" The Draken clicked his jaws in irritation. "The Academy gave us universal antidotes." "The Academy isn't here," she replied calmly. Tension hung in the air. Zaltair took a step back, watching. Human caution borders on irrationality. Alice slowly cut off a single fruit with her knife and tossed it to the ground. It lay there for a second, two, and then the husk split open. Thin, thread-like tentacles burst out from inside, frantically searching the surface nearby. Grain froze. The tentacles slowly retracted when they found no prey. "It's a trap," he said quietly. Alice merely nodded. "In the wild, bright things rarely mean food." No one spoke for a few seconds, and that was when the conflict erupted. "Why are you acting like you're in charge?" Zaltera snapped. "You're not higher in rank." "I'm not in charge. You're forcing us to act according to human logic." Grain backed him up with a low growl. "Our races are hunters. We act fast. Because of you, we're wasting time." Alice felt fatigue and thirst begin to weigh heavier than fear. "Because of me, you're still alive," she said quietly. The silence grew heavy. A branch snapped somewhere in the distance. All three fell silent instantly. Alice slowly crouched down and touched the ground. "Listen," she said. At first they heard nothing, then a faint sound. Drops. Rhythmic. Not rain. Water. They moved toward the sound, and in a few minutes came to a narrow stream flowing directly from the trunk of a huge tree. The water was clear. Zalthair's scanner beeped. "Impossible. 99% purity." Grain looked at Alice for the first time without condescension. "How did you know?" She shrugged. "Animals don't stray far from water, and that predator at night. It came from there." The Valorian slowly lowered his gaze. "So, we're surviving, thanks to your experience from that primitive planet." She smiled wearily. "Call it what you will." They drank in silence. The cold water cleared their minds. And just then, all three of them felt it at the same time, the feeling of being watched. On the opposite bank of the stream, the branches stirred slightly. Nothing was visible, but the ground beneath their feet trembled almost imperceptibly. Grain whispered, "It's here again." Alice didn't look back. She only said quietly, "No, now it's following us." And for the first time since they'd landed, she realized they were searching for a creature. But the creature had already decided not to lose sight of them. By evening, the jungle had changed again. The light had grown thicker, almost orange, and the shadows longer and unnaturally sharp. After finding a water source, the tension between the cadets eased slightly, but trust never quite returned. They moved along the stream at Alice's suggestion. Water meant life, and life meant predictability. At least that was how it was on Earth. On Elira 9, everything worked differently. Zaltair walked ahead, analyzing the ground. His sensors detected faint energy traces, large, cyclical, the same ones left by the creature they were supposed to tame. "It passes through here often," said the Valorian. "This is its territory." "Or a route," replied Alice. Green suddenly raised his hand. "Quiet!" The forest fell silent, not gradually, instantly. Even the stream seemed to grow quieter. Alice felt a chill run down her spine, not fear, instinct. "We're not the predators now," she whispered. "We're the prey." A crack. Shards of bark flew off to the left. Something enormous burst out of the thicket. The creature resembled a cross between a mantis and a panther, a long body, 6 curved limbs, and jaws that split into 3 sections. Its skin shimmered, almost blending into the surroundings. Zalthair's scanner screeched, "Ambush predator! Speed! Supercritical!" He didn't make it. The creature struck him with its side, sending him flying several meters. His body slammed into a tree root, and the air was forced from his lungs with a sharp hiss. Grain opened fire with his plasma carbine. The beams sliced through the air, but the creature was moving too fast. It slid to the side and lunged a second time, this time straight at the wounded Valorian. Alice saw that the distance was too short. They wouldn't make it. Its jaws were already opening, and then the ground shook. A dull thud rolled through the jungle as if a tree had fallen. A second, a third. The predator froze for a split second, and that was enough. A massive shadow burst out of the darkness between the trees. Therex. His appearance wasn't swift. It was inevitable. His gigantic body slammed into the ambushing hunter from the side with a force that snapped several trees at once. A deafening roar echoed, not one of rage, a warning. The smaller creature hissed and lunged in response, but the difference in size was merciless. Therex struck with his front paw, short, precise. The predator flew into the thicket and did not rise again. Silence fell, only the giant's heavy breathing. Alice slowly lowered her weapon. Therex stood between them and the jungle, between the cadets and the danger. His crests glowed with a soft golden light. His head slowly turned toward the wounded Zaltair. The Valorian froze, not daring to move. He's going to kill us now," he whispered. "No," Alice said quietly. She took a step forward. Grain barked sharply, "Don't come any closer!" But she was already walking, slowly, open palms, no sudden movements. Therex tilted his head, watching intently. His eye was the size of her breast, dark, intelligent, alive. Alice stopped a few meters away. Her heart was beating so loudly that it seemed the whole forest could hear it. "You're not hunting us," she whispered. The creature made a low sound, almost a murmur, not a threat, a response. Behind her, Zaltair groaned. Therex jerked his head toward the jungle as if checking the surroundings and then took a step back, cleared the space, as if allowing them to take the wounded man. Alice slowly knelt down beside the Valorian. "He saved me," he whispered, still in disbelief. Grain was silent for a long time. "Dominant predators don't protect the weak," he said finally. Alice looked at the giant. "So he's not just a predator." Therex watched them for a few more seconds. Then he turned and vanished among the trees, leaving behind only heavy footsteps and the trembling of the ground. The forest slowly regained its sounds. Zaltair said quietly, "The Academy said to tame him." Pause. "But it seems it's up to him to decide whether to accept us." Alice looked up into the dark thicket, and for the first time she thought, maybe the mission was never about control. Maybe they were sent here to test whether humans are capable of learning to trust what everyone else fears. The night after the attack was restless. Zaltair had survived, but he moved slowly. His side armor was cracked, and the field medmod had barely stabilized his internal injuries. Grain stood guard in silence, keeping his weapon at the ready. Alice didn't sleep. She listened to the forest. Now she could distinguish its sounds. Hunters, scavengers, small herbivorous creatures, and one more sound, deep, rhythmic. Far away, but constant. Therex's footsteps, he hadn't left. He was staying close. At dawn, she got up before the others. "Where are you going?" Grain muttered quietly, without opening his eyes. "To check the perimeter." That was half true. She left her weapons near the camp, just a knife and a small container of water. "You're being foolish, human," Zaltair said in a weak voice. "A dominant predator does not become an ally." Alice smiled. "Horses think so too, at first." And she went into the forest. She found him sooner than she expected. Therex stood by a fallen tree, bathed in the morning light. His crests glowed faintly, almost calmly. He wasn't hiding, as if he were waiting. Alice's heart raced. Don't run. Don't look him straight in the eyes for too long. Don't approach from the front. The old rules came back on their own, the ones she'd learned as a child on the ranch. She circled around, slowly approaching from the side. Tharex watched her, but didn't move. "Okay," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "We're both nervous." She stopped at a safe distance and dropped to her knees. Shorter stature, less of a threat. The wind blew in her direction, carrying the scent to the creature. Tharex raised his head, sniffing the air. Alice carefully set the water container on the ground and pushed it away from her. Not an offer, not a lure, a gesture of trust. Several long seconds passed. The giant took a step. The ground shook. Another. He approached the water but didn't touch it. Instead, his enormous eye rested on her again, assessing, like a young stallion deciding whether to let someone touch him for the first time. Alice exhaled slowly. "I won't force you," she whispered. "No one should ever start with coercion." She looked away. The most important lesson from the ranch. Predators look straight ahead. Friends don't. Tharex tilted his head. Slowly, very slowly, and took another step. Now there were only a few meters between them. Alice felt the warmth of his breath, hot, with a metallic scent. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't move abruptly. "It's okay," she said quietly. "Stay calm." And then something happened that even the academy instructors wouldn't have expected. Tharex lowered his head even further, not attacking, not threatening. He made himself smaller, a gesture that, in animals, meant only one thing: trust. Alice raised her hand very slowly. She stopped a few centimeters from his skin. "If you're against it, just walk away." The creature didn't move. Her fingers touched the warm, rough surface. The ridges glowed with a soft light. A low sound rumbled from Tharex's chest. Not a roar, but a deep, vibrating murmur. The sensation was strange. It wasn't as if she had touched an animal. It was as if the planet had turned its attention to her for a second. Alice laughed softly in relief. "That's it," she whispered. "We're just getting to know each other." A branch snapped behind her. Green and Zaltair stood at the edge of the trees, frozen by what they had seen. "Impossible," the Valorian exhaled. Grain whispered, "He let a human touch him." Tharex slowly raised his head, but didn't step away from Alice. And for the first time, it became clear. The mission was no longer a hunt. A connection had already begun to form. And the Academy might not have understood at all what had just happened. The connection with the Academy was restored suddenly, without warning. Grain's communicator flashed with a cold white light, and a hologram unfolded in the air above the camp. Clear, stable. This meant only one thing. The orbital ship was directly above them. Alice immediately grew wary. They weren't supposed to make contact for at least another 5 days. "Cadets of Expedition Group 7A," a flat voice announced, "you have exceeded expected survival rates. The evaluation phase is beginning." A figure appeared on the hologram, a commander of the Intergalactic Academy, a representative of the Archelian race. His face remained almost motionless, his eyes coldly analyzing each of them. "Report the status of the subject." Grain stood up straight. "Contact established. The creature exhibits atypical behavior, high level of cognitive response." Zaltair added, "She saved me during an attack by a local predator." A brief pause. No surprise, No approval, just a record. As expected, replied the commander. Alice frowned. As expected? The hologram turned to her. Cadet Alisa Moren, Human Sector Earth. Your reactions match the model's forecast. She felt a chill run down her spine. Which model? For a second, the connection shifted, and data appeared before them. Brain activity diagrams, behavioral graphs, comparisons of different species, and at the center, a human. The mission was never about taming a creature, the commander said calmly. The mission is to assess the ability of new species to establish interspecies trust with dominant life forms. The silence grew heavy. Zaltair was the first to understand. We are an experiment. Correct. Most intelligent races attempt to subdue or destroy an unknown alpha predator. 92% of missions end in the cadets' deaths. Grain tensed. Then why did we survive? The hologram zoomed out. A recording appeared, Alice slowly approaching Therix, averting her gaze. The human behavioral model proved unique, said the commander. You didn't try to dominate. Alice clenched her fists. You knew it was deadly dangerous, and you sent us anyway? Risk is necessary for scientific progress. Her voice grew harsher. And the creature? Is it just a variable and a test to you? A brief pause. The Therix specimen is a key biological resource of the planet. The next phase involves its transport for further study. The air seemed to grow colder. Transportation? She repeated quietly. The orbital team will arrive in 20 standard hours. Your task is to mark the object with a beacon. Grain and Zaltair exchanged glances. That sounded different now. Not like a training mission, like a hunt. Alice took a step forward. It trusts us. That is precisely why you are suited to complete the operation, the commander replied. Suddenly, all the pieces fell into place in her mind. Why they had been chosen, why the mission seemed impossible, why she was the only human among the cadets. She wasn't supposed to tame the creature, she was supposed to make it trust her, so it would be easier to take it away. The connection began to fade. Confirm execution of the order, cadets. Grain was silent. Zaltair stared at the ground. Alice looked up at the hologram. And if we refuse? For the first time, the commander's voice grew slightly colder. Failure to comply means the failure of your final mission and the revocation of your licenses. You will lose your status as intergalactic officers. A pause. The decision is yours. The hologram vanished. The forest immediately resumed its sounds, but now they seemed alien. Somewhere nearby, familiar heavy footsteps echoed. Therix was returning. Zaltair said quietly, If they take him, he won't survive outside this ecosystem. Grain slowly lowered his weapon. We were used. Alice looked in the direction from which the giant was approaching. No, she said quietly. We were given a choice. She took a deep breath. And now, it's no longer their mission. The sky above Elira 9 was torn apart by light. First, a thin silver line among the clouds, then a dull rumble that made the trees tremble. The Academy's orbital ship was entering the lower layers of the atmosphere, making no attempt to hide its presence. It didn't even try to look peaceful. The dark hull hovered over the jungle, blocking out the sun. 3 landing modules separated from it and began a slow descent. Green looked up in silence. If they activate the capture field, we won't be able to do anything. Zaltair clutched the scanner with trembling fingers. They're certain we'll follow orders. Alice wasn't looking at the ship. She was looking at Therex. The giant stood near the camp, calm, almost indifferent to the sky. His crests glowed with a steady, warm light, the same one that appeared only when he felt safe. He trusted them. That was the worst part. The landing modules touched down a few hundred meters away. Energy pulses sliced through the air, clearing the landing zone. Figures in heavy armor emerged from the fog. Not cadets, extraction operators. Their weapons were not aimed at people, at Therex. Alice's communicator came to life. "Cadets!" the commander's voice rang out. "Lock onto the target with the beacon and stand down. The operation will be completed painlessly." Therex exhaled quietly, feeling the tension. His head slowly turned toward the soldiers. The crests went dark. Danger! Alice took a step forward. "Don't move," she whispered to the creature. Grain stepped closer. "If it attacks, they'll destroy it." Zaltair added quietly. "They have neural suppressors. It won't even realize what happened." The soldiers were setting up their equipment. A ring of light began to form around the clearing, a trap. The commander spoke again. "Cadet Moren, you have demonstrated exceptional efficiency. Complete the mission." Alice slowly picked up the beacon, a small metal device. One touch, and it would all be over. She stepped forward. Grain and Zaltair held their breath. Therex tilted his head, looking at her just as he had on the first day. Without fear, without doubt, just trust. She stopped beside him. She raised her hand. The soldiers prepared themselves. The commander said, "Proceed." Alice looked at the beacon, then at the sky, and turned it off. She threw the device to the ground. No. Silence fell instantly. "Repeat the action, cadet," the commander said coldly. Alice stood before the creature, a small human figure between the army and the giant. "You wanted to test whether we could establish trust," she said. "Here's the result." Grain stepped forward beside her. Then Zaltair. The three cadets formed a line. "We are not hunters," Grain said quietly, "nor are we traitors." Zaltair added, "Science without ethics is just another form of predation." The commander was silent for a few seconds. "Do you understand the consequences?" Alice nodded. "Yes." Behind them, Therex took a step forward, not aggressively. He simply moved closer, as if he too had made a choice. The soldiers hesitated. Their weapons remained raised, but no one fired. The scanners began sounding alarms. "Commander," said one of the operators, "the subject's neural activity is synchronizing with the humans." New data appeared on the hologram, brainwaves, resonance patterns, something the galaxy had never seen before. Not taming, not subjugation, connection. A long pause. Then the commander said quietly, "Record the observation and withdraw." The soldiers lowered their weapons. The light ring faded. The landing modules began their retreat. Grain exhaled slowly. "They are leaving." Zaltair whispered, "We've just ruined our careers." Alice's communicator came to life one last time. The commander's voice sounded different now, not cold, thoughtful. "Cadet Moren, today humanity demonstrated for the first time a trait that most superior races lacked." Pause. "You chose trust over control?" The connection was lost. The sky was empty again. The jungle slowly came back to life. Therex gently nuzzled Alice's shoulder. She smiled. "It's okay. We're staying." Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance, and for the first time in the Academy's history, a new conclusion appeared in the mission report. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, but perhaps the first to learn not to conquer the unknown, but to live alongside it.